What if one of the most important groups in Jesus' entire ministry was almost completely ignored for 2,000 years? Not the 12 disciples, not the religious leaders, but women. And here's what most people miss. These women didn't just follow Jesus, they funded his entire ministry. Yeah, they actually kept it alive. And once you hear this story from the Gospel of Luke, you'll never read the Bible the same way again. Now, to understand how shocking this is, you have to understand the world back then. In first-century Jewish society, women had very limited rights. They couldn't testify in court. They weren't taught religious law like men. And in public life, they were often ignored completely. But then Jesus shows up. And instead of following the rules of culture, he breaks them. He speaks to women publicly. He teaches women. And even more shocking, he allows women to travel with him and his disciples. That alone would have made people talk. Now let's talk about one of the most intense moments in the Gospels. A woman is dragged into the middle of a crowd. The religious leaders throw her down in front of Jesus, and they say, "This woman was caught in adultery. The law says we stone her. What do you say?" But this wasn't about justice. It was a trap. If Jesus says stone her, he loses his message of mercy. If he says let her go, they accuse him of breaking the law. But Jesus doesn't rush. He bends down, writes in the dirt, and then he stands up and says, "Let him who is without sin cast the first stone." One by one they all leave, and Jesus turns to the woman and says, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." In a world where women were often discarded, Jesus protected her dignity. Now here's the part most people completely skip. In Luke chapter 8, something very unusual is mentioned. As Jesus travels from town to town preaching, there are women with him, not just following from a distance, but actively supporting the entire mission. Luke names a few: Mary Magdalene, healed by Jesus; Joanna, connected to the household of King Herod; Susanna, along with many others. And here's the key line: they supported him out of their own means. That means money, resources, financial backing. Think about that. In a society where women weren't expected to lead or fund anything publicly, these women were essentially financing the ministry that would later change the world. And then there's one more detail most people overlook. After Jesus is crucified and then rises from the dead, who is the first person to see him? Not Peter, not John, not one of the 12 disciples. It's Mary Magdalene, a woman, and she's actually the first messenger of the resurrection. She's the one told to go and share the news that Jesus is alive. Let that sink in. The most important moment in Christian history was first witnessed and announced by a woman. So what does all of this actually mean? It means Jesus didn't just teach love and equality. He demonstrated it in a culture that didn't. He elevated voices that were ignored. He trusted people society overlooked. And he built his mission with them, not above them. And whether you believe this story spiritually or just study it historically, one thing is clear: the women around Jesus were not background characters. They were part of the foundation. If this changed the way you see this story, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's never heard this perspective before, because these are the parts of history that rarely get told, but matter the most.